Hello and welcome to another edition of our ETF Insight series, where we chat with innovative leaders from the ETF and digital assets ecosystem. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Ben Slavin, who is Global Head of ETFs at BNY Mellon. Ben, it's great to see you. Why don't we kick it off by you telling us what you do at BNY?
Thanks for having me, Andrea. So I'm the Global Head of ETFs at BNY Mellon. And really, that encompasses a role that, involves all of the infrastructure that ETF issuers need to really power their business. So typically we think of those functions as custody, accounting, administration, but it also includes ETF services, which are really the nuts and bolts and the functions that ETF issuers need to create and redeem shares in the market. And also many of our issuers typically use other services that the bank offers that also involve the ETFs they issue. And these are things like FX, equity trading, securities lending, and other cash management services that, again, many ETF issuers use. All comes under the umbrella of ETF services at the bank.
One of the things that we do at Blackwater Search Advisory is we talk to a lot of asset managers who are looking to potentially enter the ETF space. And I know this is your specialty. So I wanted to ask you, just with your expertise and your global expertise in particular, what is your opinion in terms of the best way for a new entrant to come into the ETF market? You can do white label. Is it acquisition of another firm, potentially converting a current mutual fund that they may have into an ETF? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you raised a lot of different ways to enter the market, which is true. But one trend we're seeing in the market is certainly an incredible amount of new product development from existing issuers, but also these new entrants. And really, it runs the gamut in terms of ways they're entering the market. We are seeing those who want to enter organically. And really, that is a few different ways to enter successfully. One is bringing their own assets as a starting point. Certainly another is trying to replicate or create a version of a successful strategy, but do so in an ETF wrapper, effectively trying to export that investment content, but then put it, in some kind of exchange traded vehicle. We're also seeing those who want to enter quickly, who don't necessarily have the infrastructure, use a white label platform. And that is definitely something that we're seeing a higher frequency of, especially for smaller issuers or issuers who are not looking to launch an incredible amount of product. They may have a handful of strategies that they're known for, that they just want to get into the market, but simply don't want the headache and, most importantly, the cost of trying to enter the market with, again, all of their own infrastructure. More recently, we have seen an uptick, certainly in the US, with the idea of mutual fund to ETF conversions. Earlier this year, we've seen the first few conversions occur, and it's something we're seeing quite a bit of interest with across the industry. And that's a trend I would expect to see more. And finally, M&A is always an option. There still seems to be an appetite for that, but ultimately there's a limited amount of players out there. So certainly there's quite a bit of scarcity in the market, and that's certainly driving some premium valuations in the market for those who are looking to enter inorganically.
And one of the things also that I think is really interesting is, for our last question, is the race to be first mover advantage, which I know is going to be tough. There were 2 launches, metaverse thematic ETFs in Canada. And before that, there was the race that everyone, I think, was following for the Bitcoin futures ETFs. But if you want to share with us in terms of that kind of race to be first to launch.
ETF industry has a proud history of races to the starting line. Certainly first mover is key. As you said, more recently, we've seen a big race with the Bitcoin ETF products. And obviously that first mover is not everything, but it counts for a lot. And certainly, at BNY, we've been involved in several of those products, providing certain aspects of asset servicing to power those products. And that's exactly what we saw in Canada, where just one day apart created over $1 billion difference between the assets and in many cases, the trading volume that comes along with that, just by simply being 24 hours apart in terms of launch date. So it really does matter. It does remind me, though, back to my days prior to BNY, when we were in a race, what seems like almost a lifetime ago, for the first physical India ETF back in my former role. And really, again, we knew that first mover was everything. And it took an incredible amount of paperwork to get those accounts and all of the necessary things that you need to be able to trade in India. And when we were in that race and we were getting close to the end, we were missing one key piece of documentation. And effectively, it's sort of the version of a tax ID, or in the US, we think of it as a social security number, but that was tied to the fund. And actually, to try to get there first, we had actually sent a local employee down to the Social Security office, or whatever it was called, in Mumbai, to be able to get that number in person, which was the quickest way to do it. They waited 7 or 8 hours in an unbelievable line, but they were successful. They got it. And the rest, as they say, is history. And we were the first India product to market, beat our competitor by a few days. And ultimately, at the time, really never looked back, where that product was able to raise those assets quickly and kind of put the competitors in the dust. But so sometimes it's those little things that make all the difference in the ETF race.
Yeah, I would not want to be in that 8-hour line. That's for sure. Sounds like the US DMV. But, and it also highlights, though, in all seriousness, just like the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes that a lot of us, if we're not in that product development side of the business, sometimes don't appreciate, just because we're not actually maybe exposed to it. So that's a really interesting story. And Ben, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your insights. For anyone who wants to watch more of these videos, you can go to blackwatersearch.com, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, Andrea.